Welcome back. We are on Chapter 9, Cat Burgling. "The wooden horse has arrived at the gates of Troy," whispered Uncle Noggin. It was his way of telling Button and Lily that they had arrived. Lilith and Button were ready to leap out of the cheese if Jones was handed over, and ready to stay put if he wasn't. Captain Crabstick stood at the entrance to the mouse hole. Then he took his sword and tapped it against the broken wooden doorway. Something poked him in the back. The captain turned around to find himself nose to snout with Pepperjack. The mouse had been hiding outside the hole, waiting for them to turn up. Everyone knew that Captain Crabsticks was an old softy, but he was also fearless. He raised his sword slowly, pointing it toward Pepperjack's pink button nose. "Now listen here, you old scratcher. We've brought you your cheese, so let's be having our ship's cat back, do you hear me?" Pepperjack made no sound. He simply pushed the captain's blade aside with a single claw. Then he lifted the captain and pinned him against the baseboard. The captain couldn't move. Uncle Noggin mustered up all his bravery and thundered toward the mouse, only to be whipped off his feet by Pepperjack's huge tail. The other mice poured out of the mice holes, sniffing and searching, their tails winding and curling, and their long noses poking here and there. They took hold of the cheese and dragged it inside their den, but there was no sign of Jones. Just then, Doyle came padding across the shop floor toward them. In a flash, Pepperjack released his grip on the captain and shot inside the hole. Crabsticks was left in a heap on the floor, watching helplessly as Doyle gave Uncle Noggin a thorough licking. The old pirate had been covered in pet food, too. Then the dog wandered off again and curled up in his basket. "At least we're on good terms with Doyle," said Uncle Noggin. "But now we need to get in there and find Button and Lily." "Don't worry about them," said the captain. "They can handle this. I've got a plan. Now, where is that book on pest control? I was reading it only earlier." "What? We're in the middle of a crisis and you want a raid?" said Uncle Noggin. "Trust me, old chap," Captain Crabstick said, looking at the bookshelves high above them. "Ah, there it is. Help me get up to that shelf. Would you?" In the mice's den, Lily and Button sat huddled inside the cheese, filled with fear. The mice had rolled the cheese through the mouse hole, and when they came to a stop, the doorway Captain Crabsticks had carved was facing the floor. There was no way to escape. The little pirates listened as the mice clawed and nibbled at the cheese from the outside, waiting for them to burst through. Button's tummy gave a sudden rumble. "I can't believe you're thinking about food at a time like this," whispered Lily in surprise. "Hang on. It's given me an idea," said Button. "Hope you're hungry, too." And he turned around and started to dig his way out at the back. He pulled chunks of cheese out of the wall with his hands and stuffed them straight into his mouth. "It needs both of us," he said, his cheeks full. And so Lily began to dig in, too. She clawed lumps with her hands and ate as much as she could. And soon there was a hole big enough for Button to wiggle through. As Button grabbed Lily by her hands and pulled her through, claws pierced the wall of cheese behind them. It was pitch black. They could see nothing. It smelled foul, and they could feel large, soft shapes around their feet. Mouse poo. The smell was so strong they felt sick. They only had minutes before the mice realized they were there. Where was Jones? They felt their way around, the sound of their movement drowned out by the chattering of mice teeth. Button kept one hand clutched around Lily's coat tail, desperate not to lose her. Ahead of him, she kept feeling her way until a passage showed itself. They followed it, not knowing where it might lead. It was only by chance that they bumped into an old box. Something moved inside it. It was worth a try. "Help me," Button whispered to Lily. "It's heavy." Together they pulled the inside drawer out of the box. Button felt inside, and to his surprise there was something furry curled up in the corner. A faint meow whispered in the darkness. Button smiled. "Come on, old boy," he said, pulling Jones out of the box and giving him a cuddle. He felt a warm lick on his face. "You stink," said Button. "Time to get out of here," Lily urged, and grabbed Button, dragging him through the dark as he tucked his hands around Jones and held him tight. Shortly they were back where they started. The cheese was now in little piles all over the floor, but it meant the pirates could see the entrance to the mouse hole. The sniffing got louder, as if the mice had sensed something strange in their home. "Run!" yelled Lily, and they burst into full speed, racing toward the hole in the baseboard. The menacing mice were on their tails, scampering as fast as they could after the pocket pirates. Button was so full of cheese he could feel it turning around inside him as he ran. "Faster!" cried Lily from the front. Button could feel the mice's stinky breath down the back of his neck. Meanwhile, up on the bookshelf, Captain Crabsticks could just about hear the commotion below. "Brace yourself, old bean," he told Uncle Noggin. They watched as Lily and Button burst out through the baseboard hole and racing across the hallway floor. "Now!" the captain yelled, and between them he and Uncle Noggin sent the copy of Domestic Pest Control hurtling down to the ground just as the mice shot out of their hole. The heavy book landed on top of the mice with a crash. Lily and Button whirled around at the thud behind them and couldn't believe their eyes. They looked up and cheered as they spotted Captain Crabsticks and Uncle Noggin on the bookshelf, hopping around and waving their arms in glee. Dazed squeaks and squeals were coming from beneath the book, but the two pocket pirates didn't stop to find out what the mice would do next. They scooted off in the direction of the fireplace, waving at their shipmates to follow. Chapter 10. A Good Wash. Button had to scale the shelves and boxes to get to the top and wind the musical box lift. No one could do it as quickly as he could. Not even Lily, and she was fast. Jones was hanging on tightly to Button. The little cat purred into Button's chest as he climbed over all the odds and ends like a scurrying insect. There was nothing that beat a wild adventure, but returning home to a warm candle stub and an upturned thumbtack of cake crumbs came pretty close. The cozy safety of his hammock on board the ship still seemed a world away, but Button knew he would soon be there, lying back and dreaming of life on the ocean waves. Dry land was more dangerous than being at sea, it seemed. "It's all right, Jones, you can let go now," Button said to the cat. "You poor old thing, you look like you need a good meal and a good wash." He took the slice of fish from his bag and fed it to Jones. The little cat gobbled it down and carried on licking Button's hands. "Sorry," Button told him. "I don't have any more fish, but I'll tell you what I do have." He headed into the corner of the shelf, returning with one of the pots of coffee cream he had kept by for a special occasion. He opened it carefully, peeling back the foil top. Then he dipped a nutshell inside and handed the cat a generous helping. Below, the others waited eagerly. They'd had enough of hanging around below the shelf. Lily was in position, holding on to the cotton. She had impatiently tugged on it several times already. All right, I'm here," insisted Button. He wound the handle of the music box. It took some strength, and it had to be wound up fully for the passenger to reach the top. Soon Button saw Lily's grinning face appearing. "Thanks, Button," she said as she jumped back onto the shelf. The musical box played a tinkly tune as the cotton wound itself back down to the remaining crewmates. Then, when Uncle Noggin had tugged on the thread, Button began turning again. Button strained to turn the handle, feeling all the cheese churning in his tummy again. Lily joined him, and they heaved and heaved, pulling as hard as they could. "Maybe Uncle Noggin's eaten too much cheese as well," Lily suggested. Eventually, Uncle Noggin appeared, and the three of them hauled the captain up together. Aye, Captain, all present and accounted for, sir," said Button. "Well done, young Button," said the captain. "But what is that horrible smell?" "It's us," said Button. "We smell of fish and pet food and dog drool and cheese," added Lily. "In that case, it's baths all around, I'm afraid," said Captain Crabsticks. "I know we've all had one this year already, but this is a special occasion. Button, you know your duties. Off you go." And so Button headed off to the old mustard jar at the back of the shelf. He pried off the lid with a broken matchstick and pulled the tiny piece of cork out of the leaky pipe until hot water had filled their bathtub. He took the lens-cleaning cloth from the case with the broken glasses and scraped a slice of soap from the quarter of a bar that they had kept behind the bottle. While the others sat down and lit the candle, he jumped in and scrubbed himself clean. Then he let the water out into the plant pot and filled another bathtub for Lily, while the captain and old Uncle Noggin had a sneaky nap. Button sat down next to Jones and tickled him under his chin. The ship's cat gave a rumbly purr and promptly fell into a contented sleep. His adventure was over. That concludes Chapter 10, and because there are an odd number of chapters in this book has 11 chapters, so next time we are going to read just one chapter, Chapter 11.